I am 73 years old. It took me 52 years to learn what I'm about to say, and I learned it too late to use it the way I should have. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I'm telling it because there's not much time left, and silence feels heavier now than regret. Most mornings I wake up before the sun, not because I need to, but because sleep doesn't hold me like it used to. The house is quiet in a way that feels permanent. No footsteps, no doors opening. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing, reminding me I'm still here. I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that goes cold before I finish it. I look at my hands. They're thinner now. The skin is loose, veins like blue strings. These hands built a life. They also let a lot of it slip through. When you're young, you think time is loud. You think it announces itself. Birthdays, promotions, weddings, deadlines. You think you'll feel it when something important is passing. You don't. Time leaves quietly, like someone who didn't want to bother you. I spent most of my life believing I was doing the right thing. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't cruel. I showed up to work. I paid my bills. I kept my promises, at least the ones that had dates attached to them. That's what makes this harder to explain. My mistakes weren't dramatic. They didn't ruin me overnight. No one warned me. No one could have. From the outside, my life looked fine, steady, respectable. Inside it, though, something was always being postponed. I told myself I'd slow down later. I'd call people later. I'd say the things that mattered when there was more space for them. Later became a habit. In my 20s, I was tired all the time, but proud of it. Tired meant useful. Tired meant needed. I worked long hours and wore it like proof that I was building something solid. I remember coming home after dark, loosening my tie, sitting on the edge of the bed for a moment just to breathe. I thought that pause meant I was present. It didn't. It was just a pause between obligations. I told myself this was temporary, that once things settled, I'd be different. They never settled. They just changed shape. In my 30s, responsibilities grew heavier, but so did my confidence that I was doing what was expected. That belief can carry you a long way. It can carry you right past the people you love. I miss dinners without really missing them. I miss conversations by being there physically and somewhere else entirely. I nodded. I answered. I planned tomorrow, while someone was talking to me today. At the time, it didn't feel like absence. It felt like focus. No one sits you down and says, "This is the moment you'll regret later." Regret doesn't arrive like that. It waits. It lets you feel justified first. I remember a Sunday afternoon once. The kind that feels endless when you're young. Someone asked me to stay, just to sit. Nothing special planned, just time together. I said I couldn't. There was work to catch up on, papers to read, emails to answer. That choice didn't feel important. I don't even remember what I worked on that day, but I remember the way the room felt after they left. Quiet, not peaceful, just empty. At 73, I can tell you this clearly. The things you delay don't wait patiently. They thin out. They fade. Sometimes they disappear without a sound. Back then, I thought success was something you moved toward. I didn't realize it was something that could move away from you while you weren't looking. I thought being responsible meant saying no more often than yes. I thought sacrifice always paid itself back later. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just costs. In my 40s, I started noticing small distances. Not fights. Not dramatic breaks. Just less warmth in voices. Shorter conversations. People stopping halfway through stories because they could sense I wasn't fully there. I didn't blame myself. I blamed time, stress, life. It's easier to blame things you can't see. I told myself there would be a moment when everything clicked, when the work slowed, when the pressure lifted, when I could finally show up the way I meant to. That moment never came. Life doesn't hand you a clearing. It just keeps going. Now, at this age, I understand something I didn't before. Presence isn't something you earn after you're done being busy. It's something you choose while you still are. And I didn't choose it often enough. I'm not saying my life was empty. It wasn't. There were good days, laughter, achievements I'm still proud of. But pride doesn't keep you company when the house is quiet. What hurts isn't that I failed. It's that I delayed things that couldn't wait, even though I thought they could. I assumed there would always be another conversation, another weekend, another year. I was wrong. I'm saying this now because at 73, the margin is thin. Days feel shorter, not because the hours changed, but because the future did. If you're listening to this, and you still feel like time stretches out in front of you, I'm glad. Truly. I just hope you don't treat that stretch like a guarantee. This took me 52 years to learn. By the time I reached my 40s, my life had a rhythm that felt unbreakable. Wake up early, work all day, come home tired, promise myself tomorrow would be lighter. Tomorrow almost never was. I didn't think of myself as absent. That's the truth. I thought I was dependable. I was the person who handled things. The one people relied on when something needed fixing or finishing. But being relied on can become a hiding place. I began measuring my worth by how full my days were. Empty space made me uneasy. Silence felt like laziness. Rest felt undeserved. So I filled everything. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became rare. I started answering, "Let's do it another time," without noticing how often I said it. Another time sounds harmless. It sounds reasonable. It sounds kind. But it's vague enough to never arrive. I remember a friend from those years. We used to talk for hours once. About nothing important. About everything. Over time, our conversations shrank. 5 minutes. 2 minutes. A promise to catch up soon. One day, I realized I didn't know what was happening in his life anymore. And worse, he didn't ask about mine. No argument. No ending. Just a quiet drifting apart. That's how most losses happen. Not with slammed doors, but with unanswered ones. In my 50s, my body started sending messages I ignored. Fatigue that sleep didn't fix. A stiffness that lingered longer each morning. I told myself this was normal. Everyone slows down. No need to make a fuss. I treated my own limits the same way I treated people's invitations. Later, I kept telling myself I was providing, that this was love in its practical form. That one day, when things calmed down, I'd have time to enjoy what I was building. I didn't ask who I was building it for anymore. There's a strange thing that happens when you're busy for too long. You stop noticing what's missing. Absence becomes familiar. Distance feels normal. I didn't feel lonely then. That came later. Back then, I felt occupied. Occupied is not the same as connected. I missed small moments that seemed unimportant at the time. Ordinary days. Ordinary conversations. The kind that don't announce themselves as memories while they're happening. I thought the big moments were what mattered. Celebrations, milestones, achievements. Now I know it's the quiet repetition that holds a life together. I remember once sitting in my car after work, engine off, just staring at the dashboard. I didn't want to go inside yet. Not because I didn't love the people there, but because I didn't know how to shift gears anymore. Work had a script. Home required presence. I stayed in the car longer than I should have. Just breathing. Just delaying. That pause felt harmless. It wasn't. Delays pile up. They become distance. I started noticing that people stopped waiting for me. They adjusted. They made plans without checking my schedule. They learned not to expect too much of my attention. At the time, I was relieved. Fewer demands. Less pressure. I didn't realize what I was trading away. There's a particular kind of regret that comes from realizing you trained people how to live without you. I wasn't unkind. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't fully there. And that's harder to forgive later. By my late 50s, some doors were already closed. Not locked. Just no longer opening the way they once did. Relationships don't freeze in place when neglected. They move on. I told myself this was natural. People grow apart. Life changes. That's true. But not all drifting is inevitable. Some of it is chosen quietly, one postponement at a time. I still believed I had time. That belief is powerful. It can carry you straight into your 60s without ever questioning it. I thought clarity would come with age. That wisdom would arrive automatically. That one day I'd wake up and understand what mattered most. Understanding does come, but often after the chance to act is past. The first real crack in my certainty didn't come from failure. It came from loss. Someone I assumed would always be there wasn't. There was no warning that felt loud enough. No dramatic build-up. Just a phone call that changed the shape of my days. In that moment, I didn't think about work. I didn't think about unfinished tasks or postponed emails. I thought about all the conversations we didn't have because I thought there would be time. That's when the weight began to settle. Not all at once. Slowly, like dust on furniture you stop using. I began replaying ordinary moments in my mind, times I could have stayed longer, listened better, said more. Not grand speeches. Simple things. I'm here. You matter. I have time. Those words are small, but they don't age well when left unsaid. At 73, I can tell you this. The cost of delay isn't obvious while you're paying it. It shows up later when refunds are no longer possible. I didn't waste my life, but I wasted parts of it by assuming they were reusable. They weren't. The turning point didn't arrive with drama. No hospital alarms. No sudden collapse. It came quietly, like most truths do, when you're finally still enough to hear them. I was in my early 60s when it happened. Old enough to feel time tightening. Young enough to believe I could still negotiate with it. Someone close to me got sick. Not the kind of sick that shocks you at first. The slow kind. The kind that lets you believe things will stabilize. That there's room to adjust later. I visited when I could. I called when it fit between other obligations. I told myself I was being reasonable. I wasn't absent, just measured. There's a difference, and I didn't understand it then. One afternoon, I sat beside a bed in a quiet room. Machines hummed softly. The light through the window didn't move much. We talked about small things. The weather. A memory that surfaced halfway and then disappeared. At one point, they looked at me and said very calmly, "You're always in a hurry." They didn't sound angry, just observant. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else said that day. Because I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain. I wanted to list all the reasons. Instead, I stayed quiet. Because I knew it was true. After that, time stopped feeling endless. Didn't speed up. Narrowed, like a road losing lanes. I started noticing how often I checked the clock. How frequently I thought about what I had to do next instead of where I was. Awareness is a strange thing. Once it arrives, it doesn't shout. It just sits there, waiting for you to acknowledge it. I tried to change. Not dramatically. Just enough to feel like I was responding. I stayed longer sometimes. I listened harder when I remembered to. But habits built over decades don't loosen easily. They resist. They pretend to cooperate while quietly staying in control. Then came the day I missed being there when it mattered most. I was delayed. Nothing dramatic. Traffic. A call that ran long. A decision that felt unavoidable in the moment. By the time I arrived, the room was already quiet. There are moments you replay for the rest of your life. This was one of mine. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. I didn't get to say the things I thought I'd say later. The things I assumed would wait. Later never came. I stood there, feeling foolish for all the confidence I had placed in time, all the trust one had given to tomorrow. That's when clarity arrived. Not as wisdom, as loss. I understood finally that delay is a decision, even when it doesn't feel like one. I had spent decades believing I was choosing stability, responsibility, safety, but underneath that I was choosing distance, over and over again. The grief wasn't just for the person I lost. It was for the version of myself I never became, the one who stayed, the one who listened without checking the clock, the one who understood that presence is not something you schedule around life. It is life. After that, things I once cared deeply about felt smaller, not meaningless, just lighter, less urgent. I didn't quit my routines overnight. I didn't reinvent myself. That's not how real change works at this age. What changed was the weight of certain moments. Silence stopped feeling like something to escape, started feeling like a chance. I began noticing how often people pause before speaking, as if checking whether you're really there. I noticed how much people give when they feel seen, and I noticed how little time I had left to practice that. At 73, I live with the understanding that some things cannot be repaired, not because they were broken badly, but because they were neglected too long. There are conversations I can never have, apologies that no longer have a listener, affection that has nowhere to land. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. If you're younger, you may think I'm talking about extreme cases, tragedy. I'm not. I'm talking about ordinary days, ordinary evenings, ordinary chances to be present that feel unimportant until they're gone. I thought the important parts of life would announce themselves. They don't. They whisper. And if you're always busy, you miss them. What took me 52 years to learn is simple, but not easy to accept. The life you're living now is not a rehearsal. The people in it are not permanent. And delay doesn't feel like harm while you're doing it. Feels responsible, sensible, temporary. It isn't. I don't say this with urgency. I say it with regret that has settled into acceptance. There's still time for small things, for listening better, for staying a little longer. I do that now, not to fix the past, just to honor what's left. But I know what can't be reclaimed. That knowledge is heavy and honest.
Now, at 73, my days are simpler. Not because I plan them that way, but because life eventually makes the choices for you. There are fewer calls, fewer places to go, fewer reasons to rush. The calendar that once felt crowded now looks almost bare. This is what people don't tell you about getting old. It's not just that your body slows down. It's that the world stops asking for you as much. First, that feels like relief. Then it feels like something else. I walk through rooms filled with old sounds. Laughter that used to live there. Arguments that once felt urgent. Names that don't get spoken anymore. Objects outlast people. That still surprises me. There are things I can never fix now. Not because I wouldn't try. Because there's no one left to fix them with. Some relationships don't end. They just expire. I used to think closure came from conversations. From explanations. From apologies spoken clearly and received fully. Most of the time, closure comes from realizing you ran out of time to say what you meant. I live with that. I don't beat myself up over it anymore. That doesn't help. Regret doesn't need punishment to stay alive. It's already loyal. What I have now is understanding. And a quiet wish that it had arrived earlier. I understand that I confused being busy with being necessary. I understand that I mistook responsibility for love. I understand that I thought presence was something I could offer later, when life felt calmer. Life never did. If I'm speaking to you now, it's not to tell you what to do. I don't believe in instructions anymore. I'm just telling you what it felt like to reach the end of long years and realize the most important moments were the ones I treated as ordinary. The conversations you delay don't wait forever. The people you assume will always understand eventually stop explaining. And the version of you who meant to do better doesn't age alongside you. It disappears quietly. If you still have people who ask for your time, that's not a burden. That's a gift. If someone wants to sit with you, talk with you, share nothing in particular, that's not an interruption. I learned that too late. There is no moment when life finally opens up and gives you permission to be present. You take that permission yourself, or you don't. At this age, I don't chase anything anymore. I don't postpone conversations. I don't leave words unsaid because they feel awkward. Say them. Gently. Honestly. Even if my voice shakes. Not because I expect something back. 'Cause I know what it costs to wait. When people ask me what took me 52 years to learn, this is the closest I can get to the truth. Time doesn't teach you what matters. Loss does. And by the time loss finishes teaching, your choices are fewer. I don't have grand wisdom to pass on. Just lived truth. If this meant something to you, I'm glad you stayed until the end. And if you want to hear more stories like this, spoken softly and honestly, you can subscribe to the channel The Gentle Truths. It's a quiet place. That's intentional. Share your thoughts if you feel like it. Or don't. Silence has meaning too. As for me, I'll finish my tea, even if it's cold, and sit a little longer in the quiet. There's not much time left. But there's enough to be here now.